Alright, in this video we're going to look at problem solving for the first time, which always gets people kind of excited. Maybe not so excited, but problem solving is an important skill, and we're going to keep it pretty simple here, but our approach is going to be pretty standard throughout the semester. So on number 1 here it says, Khalid makes an investment at 4% simple interest. At the end of 1 year, the total value of the investment is $1,560 in principal and interest. How much did he borrow? So basically, there's a certain amount that he invested, and in fact, that's what we're looking for. Actually, I should fix this because this says borrow. It should say how much did he invest. All right, so let's fix that. So we need to find out how much was invested. All right, so let's call that X. Let the amount invested be called X. In fact, this is what algebra is all about. We're using a variable to represent a value that we don't know. And when we write an equation, we'll use that equation to figure out what this value is. And so now we ought to be able to write an equation for this situation, and that's what we want to do. This is what we sometimes refer to as modeling. We want to come up with an equation that models the problem. Well, this is a pretty simple, I should say pretty basic equation to set up. It says that, so if he had $1,560 in principal and interest, that means the principal, that's what he invested, plus the interest is $1,560. So X, that's the investment, plus the interest. Remember, the interest is what we earned after 1 year. That's what simple interest is. So we're getting 4% interest on what's in our account for a year. So the amount of interest that's earned is 4% of what's invested. Well, that would be 0.04 times X. So for example, if you were earning, let's say X was 1. If you invested $1, after 1 year, the interest on $1 would be 4% of 1, or 0.04 times 1, which is actually 4 pennies. So basically what this is saying is for every dollar you invest, you're making 4 pennies at the end of a year. So that's the idea. So notice we have, well actually we need to set that equal to 1560. And then notice we have like terms here. They both have an X to the first power. And so we're going to add 1 and 0.04. We'll get 1.04x equals 1560. So look at what we have here. Let's see if we can make some sense out of this. Now 100% of what we invested would actually be 1, which represents 100% times X. If we're, in this case, we actually are going to have more than what we invested. We're going to have 104% of what we invested. And so that's what this equation is really saying. So we need to solve for X. So since we have 1.04 times X, we'll do the opposite and divide on each side. And so we're going to get X is equal to $1,500. Now before you move on, I want you to see how easy it is to check these answers. So when you're doing a problem like this on the test, it's very easy to know that you did it right. Let's just go back and plug in the numbers. So 1,500, which is what we're saying our answer is, X, plus 4% of that is equal to 1,560. And if you check that, you will see that that is true. Very easy to check that on your calculator. All right, let's look at number 2. So on number 2, it says the width of a soccer field recommended for players under the age of 12 is 35 yards less than the length. The perimeter of the field is 330 yards. Find the dimensions of the field. Now keep in mind, this is a rectangular field, and so the first thing I would encourage you to do is draw a rectangle. And again, we need to we're going to use algebra or a variable to represent our dimensions here. In fact, we want to use the same variable for both. Now it says that the width is 35 yards less than the length. So let's start by calling L the length, and so now we should be able to write the width. Well, the width is 35 yards less than the length, so it's the length minus 35. Now there's also a formula. We're given the perimeter here. There's a formula for the perimeter of a rectangle. Its perimeter equals 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. And remember, perimeter is like the fence around the outside of a figure. And so this makes sense because notice we have 2 lengths and 2 widths that are the same size. And so really that's all the formula is saying. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in our width. Well, 2 times W we're going to write as 2 times L minus 35 because W, or our width, we're not using another variable, we're using L minus 35 to represent that. Plus 2 times the length, which we called L, is equal to 330. So let's go ahead and distribute here. We'll get 2L minus 70 plus 2L equals 330. Notice we have some like terms. 2L and 2L is 4L. Don't forget your minus 70, that's equal to 330. We'll add 70 to both sides. We get 4L is equal to 400, which means L is 100, or that's our length. So I'm going to write that in here. And that means L minus 35, that would be 100 minus 35, which is 65. And so what we're saying is our width is 65 yards. You should put in the units. It's yards in this problem. And our length is 100 yards. Now again, on the test, or if you had to do a problem like this, you should know that you're doing it right if you check it. So 2 times 65 plus 2 times 100 should equal 330, and it does. All right, that's the end of this video.